voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Joining us now is Slate.com senior editor Dahlia Lithwick to help us make sense of this. Dahlia, it is great to lay eyes on you. Thank you for making time to be here tonight.
So good to be here.
First, let me ask you what I screwed up in explaining that, and if it was fair to describe today's ruling as a surprise, given what people thought of the arguments back in November.
You didn't screw up. I do think it's important that the court didn't get to the constitutional question. The court expressly set aside the equal protection question, whether there was racial animus. That was one of the things they could have decided. John Roberts, stroke of a pen, said, we're not even going to find that here. Moreover, there wasn't even a plausible inference that this was done for racial reasons. That hurts the Dreamers a little bit, because it would have been a huge win to get a constitutional decision saying this was done for racial biased reasons. That said, everything else you said was correct, and I think this looks a lot to me like last year's census case, where it was Trump's to win, shoddy lawyering, bad failure to show your work, and lots of fibbing seem to have gotten under the Chief Justice's skin. And you sort of come away saying this is the second time where the Chief Justice is just saying, why can't you just lie a little better?
Wow. In terms of that being the deficiency that the Chief Justice homed in on, as you say, avoiding the constitutional issues with DACA directly, does that mean that there is a fix that the administration could gin up relatively quickly to address Roberts' concerns and put the repeal of DACA back into effect? Would this be relatively easy for them to get right now, given what he said about how they got it wrong?
I think two answers, Rachel. I think the first is absolutely. In fact, John Roberts more or less gives a roadmap. He says, if I were to spike this back to DHS and they were to do these things, I would have no problem under the Administrative Procedures Act. It's just that those things weren't done. And that is a huge worry for Dreamers, because it's a signal that do it correctly next time and he might be more receptive. On the political question, do I think he's really going to, Donald Trump is going to say, I'm going to prioritize doing this again in an election year when it is so unpopular? Part of the reason, Rachel, that the Trump administration got into trouble was no one wanted to own this. Congress didn't want to own it. The White House didn't want to own it. I think they were hoping that the Supreme Court would do away with DACA. So asking Trump to own it when it's wildly unpopular in an election year where he's sinking fast, it's a political question, but I don't think it's smart.
Dahlia, is there something else that's going to happen before the end of the term that's going to bring this week of two relatively sort of progressive opinions crashing down on us like a reverse hangover? Is this, in terms of what else we're going to hear from the court, are you expecting any doom and gloom between here and the end of the term?
I mean, we have so many big cases. We have this faithless electors case. We have the Trump financial documents case, whether or not there can be oversight. And, of course, June Medical, the huge abortion case. So there's so much to come. And I think there was a little bit of a feeling after both Title VII and DACA this week that, like, the shoe's going to drop and it's going to drop hard on our heads. But maybe we just have a new John Roberts who knows he's going to be on the court for 3 more decades and doesn't want to fiddle with Trumpism anymore. I don't know. I wish I knew.
It is Friday, the 19th of June of 2020, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunnar the English Bulldog is our snoozing sous chef, and our daily special is Blue Moon Spirits Fridays, because we are all Nighthawks in the Diner of Life. Well, happy Juneteenth. Slavery is over. If only we could convince a toxic third of the society, which I have to admit, that toxic third seems to have infected more than just their toxic third with institutional systemic racism. We have to identify it, we have to name it, and we have to do something about it. Yeah, well, I'm a race traitor. Yeah, that's right. A bunch of people, for some reason, in Ashland, Oregon, a bunch of maggots presumed I was black because I was defending civil rights. And in their addled, small, little, know-nothing brains, the only people that can advocate for civil rights are black and brown and yellow people, white people. You're a race traitor if you do that. Yeah, I was told, why don't you extol the great virtues of the white race? I told them I don't have to. It's extolled all the time. Come on. Wake up. So I said that, really Juneteenth should be a national holiday. Oh, my God, did that bring them out of the woodwork. You can always tell a racist by the way they react to the charge of racism. Do you ever have you ever noticed that the only people who whine about racism being charged are the racists? People who are anti-racism don't argue it. They go, yeah, I'm an anti-racist. I'm there's no such thing as not being racist. Let's just make that clear. You're either anti-racist or you're a racist. There's no in between. There's no not being a racist. It's just, they did a blind study, several as a matter of fact, and that's just the case. All right. Okay, so from there in Ashland, Oregon, and of course I live in Rogue River, but Ashland being in Southern Oregon, and I have some business and personal ties to Ashland. I actually resided there for a short while, way back in the day when I was playing music. Yeah, well, I still play music, but not in such a professional capacity any longer. Anyway, so from the race trader, I have now moved, and these are the old arguments that just go on and on and on, and you have like weird right-wing maggot types that are there, and you think that they're bots or trolls, and it turns out, well, they're one or the other, because after a while they get hounded out. Hounded? Maybe they're the one doing the hounding. Anyway, we have a new group of tag team right-wing wrestlers coming online to, continue the match. So from race traitor, I'm now a gender traitor for defending a woman's right to choose. Because I'm not a woman. And if I'm not a woman and I'm defending a woman's right to choose, obviously I've been brainwashed. Obviously. And since I'm the brainwashed one, they are now charging that I am going to defend after birth abortion. That's it. After birth abortion. First of all, I think what they should do with the afterbirth is dispose of it, properly. Okay, but they mean killing the baby after it's been born. And that's an after-birth abortion. It's just a crazy BS. And apparently I'm the one that's been brainwashed. Well, I have mentioned before that I don't think any of these people making these charges and accusations and claims ever went to the university in town, Southern Oregon University in Ashland. And, there is a great theater there. It used to be called the Shakespearean Theater, Ashland Shakespearean Theater. Now it's the Oregon Theater because they do more than Shakespeare. I don't understand. Few ever speak about the theater. And I have to say, that's where my personal and some professional ties remain, with the theater and the university. But, well, it's like any town. I mean, when I lived in Berkeley, there were a lot of people that never went to UC Berkeley. There was a lot of people that never went to any university at all. And I hate to say this, they tended to be Republicans. Tended to be. And maybe in Berkeley, a Republican in Berkeley would just be, I don't know, a neoliberal Democrat everywhere else. Maybe. I think when they go anywhere else, they resort to the more extreme Republican points of view because it's in their natural inclination. Anyway, in Berkeley, we had a bunch of know-nothing idiots, too, that did not belie the import of an international university mere blocks from where I lived. So it is with Ashland, Oregon, well-respected university, a world-renowned theater group, and you have a bunch of know-nothings voting for Trump because they never go to the theater, and I don't know, maybe they took a online course at Heald welding. Maybe how do you do an online course on welding? Well, I guess they have to do it now. Oh, and also wearing a mask. Apparently wearing a mask in Ashland and anywhere else is an anti-Trump sign. And I'm okay with that. Except for one thing. What is so hard about wearing a mask, washing your hands, and caring for your neighbor? I know. The whole problem with the right wing is that they just don't want to be good neighbors and nobody can force them. They'll call it political correctness. You can't force me to be a good neighbor. Well, how about doing it just out of the goodness of your heart? I don't have any goodness in my heart, you godless liberal. Okay. And then we slink back into our little abodes and we don't bring it up ever again. Well, I think people are tired, and that's why the protests are continuing across the nation because of systemic racism, institutional racism, and really the wholesale taking over by the know-nothings. It's about time that we people who know something rule the roost once again. And when I say rule the roost, I mean, in a democratic interplay of opposing ideas coming to a conclusion so that we can fix the potholes in the street. Now would be a good time to have that infrastructure bill, don't you think? Yeah. All right, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy as we finish out the week on Juneteenth? Oh, another little tidbit. I got my griddle, my Blackstone griddle, and I'm gonna like put that together today, and we're gonna enjoy Juneteenth barbecuing, grilling. Yes, we are griddling. I like flat tops. They're fun. They're fun to work with. And if I need to get any kind of char marks, I have some Loge cast iron. Well-seasoned cast iron, by the way. Yeah, little grills. All right, what's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Blue Moon Spirits Fridays on Juneteenth. GOP governors refuse to take any blame for virus spikes after rushing to reopen their states. That's right. Facebook removed Trump campaign ads with symbols once used by the Nazis. Now I'm getting from the usual suspects, it's really Antifa. No, it's not. It's really the Nazis. And here, I'll show you the chart that they got it from Dachau. And apparently that chart, the official chart from Dachau, is a liberal conspiracy to make Trump look bad. Okay, yeah, we did it all the way back in the 30s and 40s. And a lawsuit filed by Black Lives Matter against Bill Barr might finally be the case that John Mitchell's the Trump consigliere. Finally. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where U.S. congressional lawmakers offered a bill to block Trump from his German troop withdrawal. And a Turkish court ruled a Kurdish leader's lengthy jailing violated his rights. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the rightish of the page is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the page to our Patreon site. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, we diligently stretch your dollars into contortions beyond measure. Indeed, we are able to pay our bills because of your generosity. And if you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, we stretch those dollars on the quantum level, and we leave no crazy quark unstretched. And we then, as I mentioned, able to pay our bills, fly under the radar, and continue resisting as the founders originally intended. Thank you for your generosity, and please help us. We continue to need that help. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that, and we thank Tom for doing that. I, of course, take care of at Justice Putnam on Twitter. Follow me there because I post the show notes and links diary on Daily Co's about 10 minutes before showtime, and then get that linked up on Twitter and all those other social media platforms that are available. And they all are. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And most importantly, please pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes. And you can pick up all of our Netroots Radio generated podcasts in the same fashion. So do. Kelly Lincoln shows, get those. And pick up the Justice Department, Music Sans Frontières, Music Without Borders. We broadcast that on Sunday nights, and then that becomes available on podcast for your, well, you know, your music pandemic, civil unrest, music pleasure. Indeed. All right, let's dive into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. Oh, I failed to mention the French 77s are virtually available for your virtual imbibing pleasure. Josh Israel of the American Independent brings us this first offering. At least 4 GOP governors are trying to shift blame after their push to prematurely reopen their states led to a spike in COVID-19 cases. On April 16, the White House released its 3-phase set of guidelines for how states could more safely, easy social distancing rules. Well, that's a terse little sentence there. Where's your editors? Governors Greg Abbott of Texas, hiss. Ron DeSantis of Florida, hiss. Doug Ducey of Arizona, hiss. And Henry McMaster of South Carolina, hiss, were among the many governors who quickly pushed to reopen their economies despite not having met the 5 federal criteria for doing so. And that was according to an analysis by ProPublica. Yeah, the Fed set out some guidelines, but Trump doesn't follow them, so why should anybody else? Last week, the Washington Post reported that their states were among 14 seeing their highest 7-day average of new coronavirus cases since the start of the pandemic. On Tuesday, Arizona, Florida, and Texas are their highest ever number of daily positive tests. But rather than acknowledging that they moved too quickly, the governors of those states have sought to explain away the sudden spike in cases by casting blame on random culprits. And in Ashland, Oregon, Black Lives Matter gets blamed too, even though those cases, if they show up because Black Lives Matter protesters all wear masks. And they're out in the open. But those are going to show up in another 2 to 3 weeks. So give us time. All right. Abbott complained on Monday that 20-somethings in Texas were behind the abrupt shift because he told them to all go out and share their spit having drinks. Now he's blaming them. Typical, isn't it? What we're seeing there is people of that age group, they're not following these appropriate best health and safety practices. They're not wearing face masks. They're not sanitizing their hands. They're not maintaining the safe distancing practices. And as a result, they are contracting COVID-19 at a record pace in the state of Texas. I know that's not a Texas accent for Abbott, but hey, that's the way it goes. Anyway, Abbott's an idiot. He's out there telling people not to wear masks, go share spit, go and, get right in someone's face. Get right in their face. And now he's saying, they don't follow any of the safety protocols. No wonder they don't follow any of the safety protocols. Trump doesn't. He's their god. DeSantis also placed some of the blame for Florida's spikes on young people, but pinned most of the problem on agricultural workers because they're brown. It's those dirty pests, brown pests. Where is the insecticide guy? Where is he? DeSantis also claimed some of the new cases were from increased testing of people's ages 20 to 45. If only we didn't test, we would never have the virus spreading. Really? Ducey, for his part, claimed that a few Arizona businesses were behind the problem. As we've opened, there's been good actors, he told reporters on Wednesday, but there have been more than an outlier here and there. There have been some bad actors. I've chosen to focus on the good actors, trying to promote responsible decisions and good business management, but we need to address the folks that are not in line. And who are those folks? Meanwhile, in South Carolina, McMaster said that residents were being irresponsible by not staying away from each other, after he's also told people, go out, share your spit, go to church, have a speaking in tongues social ice cream social. What have you got to lose? Eric Tucker and Barbara Ortate of the Associated Press bring us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Facebook has removed campaign ads by Donald Trump and Vice President Mike Pence that featured an upside-down red triangle, a symbol once used by Nazis to designate political prisoners, commies, and others in concentration camps. The company said in a statement yesterday, Thursday, that the ads violated, quote, our policy against organized hate, end quote. A Facebook executive who testified at a House Intel committee on Thursday said the company does not permit symbols of hateful ideology unless they're put up with context or condemnation. Well, I should say that I was actually suspended from Facebook for posting a local Nazi doing the one-arm salute during an anti-Jewish rally, and I was suspended because I posted a hateful symbol because this guy was doing the one-arm salute at an anti-Jew rally. As if I was advocating being an anti-Semite. Well, I think your algorithm needs a little bit of tweaking. Zuck. In a situation where we don't see either of those, we don't allow it on the platform and we remove it. That's what we saw in this case. With this ad, and anywhere that symbol is used, we would take the same action. Nathaniel Gleicher, the company's head of security, told lawmakers at the hearing. The Trump campaign spent more than $17,000 on ads for Trump and Pence combined. The ads began running on Wednesday and received hundreds of thousands of impressions. In a statement, Trump campaign communications director Tim Murtaugh said the inverted red triangle was a symbol commonly used by Antifa. Antifa! So it was included in an ad about Antifa. He said the symbol is not in the Anti-Defamation League's database of symbols of hate. And the Trump campaign also argued that the symbol is merely an emoji. But it is ironic that it took a Trump ad to force the media to implicitly concede that Antifa is a hate group, Murtaugh added. Well, let's be clear. Antifa is an umbrella term for leftist militants bound more by belief than organizational structure. Because I keep asking, you can go to any campus in the United States and find a Turning Point USA brown shirt club. But you can never find the Antifa club president on campus because they don't have one. They don't have a club. They don't have any organization. Please. Trump has blamed Antifa for the violence that erupted during some of the more recent protests, but federal law enforcement officials have offered little evidence of this because there is none. Some experts disputed that the red triangle was commonly used as an Antifa symbol. European anti-fascist groups initially used the red triangle as a symbol, hoping to reclaim its meaning after World War II, but it is no longer widely used by the movement, nor by U.S. Antifa groups, said Mark Bray, a Rutgers University historian and author of Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. The ADL said the triangle is not in its database because it is a historical symbol, and the database includes only those symbols used by modern-day extremists and white supremacists, so I guess I got to add this one now. Whether aware of the history or the meaning, for the Trump campaign to use a symbol, one which is practically identical to that used by the Nazi regime to classify political prisoners in concentration camps, to attack his opponents with that symbol is offensive and deeply troubling, Anti-Defamation League Chief Executive Officer Jonathan Greenblatt said. Even with the ads removed, Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook still face persistent criticism for not removing or labeling earlier posts by Trump that spread misinformation about voting by mail, and many said encouraged violence against protesters during recent unrest in American cities. And I should add, Trump just put out on Facebook and Twitter today that there will be violence at his maggot hate rally if Antifa shows up, and it's going to be different in that town. So the only question I need to ask, and I wish someone in the Washington press pool would, so are your shock troops going to be wearing brown or black shirts? Of the Independent Media Institute by way of Raw Story brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. No attorney general since John Mitchell has gotten away with assaulting the rule of law more than Bill Barr. But unlike Mitchell, who served 19 months in prison for his role in the Watergate scandal, Barr has yet to be held accountable for his ever-expanding laundry list of outrageous misdeeds and derelictions. I should add here that Mitchell was only thrown in jail, actually only put on trial, after Nixon had already left office, and he was no longer Attorney General. So we have that going for us. But maybe we can expedite this issue. Maybe. To be sure, there have been several efforts to bring Barr to heel. Last July, for example, the House voted to hold both Barr and Commerce Secretary Wilbur Sleepy Ross in criminal contempt for refusing to turn over documents related to the Trump administration's attempt to include a citizenship question in the 2020 census. But in an act of defiance that surprised absolutely no one, the DOJ, which Barr heads, refused to pursue charges against either cabinet member, leaving the House with no means of enforcement. Wow, pretty nice job if you can get it. Especially the only way you can get a job like that is if you're in a mob, in this reporter's opinion. More recently, more than 2,000 former Justice Department lawyers signed open letters demanding Barr's resignation after he intervened in the cases of Roger Stone and Michael Flynn to overturn the sentencing recommendations of career prosecutors. And in a scathing rebuke published on the 9th of May, the editorial board of the New York Times accused Barr of using the DOJ as a political weapon to advance and protect the personal interests of the president. And yet, despite the denunciations, Barr remains in effect the country's top cop. But where Congress and Barr's critics have come up empty, the Black Lives Matter movement may ultimately succeed. On June 4, Black Lives Matter's Washington, D.C. chapter and 5 individuals filed a novel and potentially far-reaching federal suit against Barr, Trump, Secretary of Defense Mark Esper, Army Chief of Staff General James McConville, and other law enforcement officials, alleging their First and Fourth Amendment rights were violated when peaceful demonstrators were violently removed from Lafayette Square, just outside the gates of the White House, on the evening of June 1. The individual plaintiffs, which include a 9-year-old boy, were among the thousands of demonstrators who had gathered to protest the murder of George Floyd. The lawsuit, as it was later amended, alleges that, without provocation, and well before a 7 p.m. curfew was scheduled to take effect, agents in the U.S. Secret Service, U.S. Park Police, D.C. National Guard, Federal Bureau of Prisons, and the U.S. Military Police fired tear gas, pepper spray capsules, rubber bullets, and flash bombs into the crowd to shatter the peaceful gathering, forcing demonstrators to flee the area. Many peaceful demonstrators were injured, some severely, the lawsuit stated. The reason the square was cleared the lawsuit charges was to permit Trump to walk to a photo opportunity at St. John's Episcopal Church, accompanied by Barr, Esper, Chief of Staff Mark Meadows, Ivanka Trump, and other senior advisors. Outside the church, Trump paused briefly for pictures, clumsily raising a Bible upside down in his right hand. He returned to the White House at approximately 7:09 p.m. without entering the church or uttering a word of prayer, conciliation, or condolence. The photo stunt, according to the suit, was a wholly illegal reason for abridging the constitutional rights of plaintiffs and the others assembled in Lafayette Square. Of all the defendants sued in the case, Barr is the only one cited both as an individual and official capacity. All the others, including Trump, are being sued only in their official roles as government actors. The distinction, while technical, is important because only officials sued in their individual capacities can be held personally liable for damages caused by their actions. Interesting now, isn't it? Is there implied immunity for Barr? I'm sure he has a little-known secret OLC memo that he can produce that says it does. The reporter spoke by phone with 2 of the attorneys handling the lawsuit, Caitlin Banner of the Washington Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights and Urban Affairs, and Scott Michelman, the legal director of the ACLU of the District of Columbia, to discuss the legal theories behind the case and to clarify the focus on Barr. They both confirmed that the typical federal lawsuit alleging police abuse and constitutional violations is litigated against local or state law enforcement under a statutory scheme that dates back to the KKK Act of 1871, and which today is codified as a pillar of civil rights law in Section 1983 of Title 42 of the United States Code. There is no federal statute, however, that allows damages actions against federal law enforcement personnel for the violation of constitutional rights. Such suits are nonetheless permitted under a line of cases decided by the Supreme Court commencing in 1971, with the landmark ruling in Bivens v. 6 unknown named agents of the FBI Bureau of Narcotics, which authorized civil damages and actions for illegal searches and seizures, including unlawful arrests, as well as the use of excessive force. To establish liability under Bivens against supervisory officials like Barr, Banner and Mickelman said direct involvement must be pleaded and proven. Barr has been singled out among the defendants in the Black Lives Matter complaint because he gave the order to clear Lafayette Square, setting the stage for the police riot that ensued. Detailing Barr's actions, the complaint, as later amended, alleges that early in the day on June 1, the Attorney General directed the Federal Bureau of Prisons and other federal law enforcement agencies to send riot teams and other specialized agents to control the protests. And the complaint continues in minute-by-minute detail. At approximately 6:08 p.m., Defendant Barr entered Lafayette Square. At 6:10 p.m., Defendant Barr was behind the law enforcement officials in the square pointing north towards St. John's Church. By 6:30, the melee had begun. Citing reporting in the Washington Post, the complaint alleges that sources within the Department of Justice have acknowledged that Barr personally ordered that the square be cleared. And while not mentioned in the complaint, White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany unwittingly confirmed in her June 3rd press briefing that Barr had indeed ordered a one-block perimeter in front of the White House to be emptied. Barr has since denied issuing the tactical order to stop the operation in interviews with the AP and on Face the Nation. He also asserted, without any evidence, that the protesters were rowdy and non-compliant and had hurled projectiles at the police. But who are you going to believe? The actual film or your lying eyes? Let us John Mitchell Bill Barr now more than ever. With that stated, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world, and we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. This week, The Moss Show. In the new movie Shirley, Elizabeth Moss takes on the title, if not leading role, in a loose biopic about the 1950s horror writer Shirley Jackson, based on Susan Merrill's novel Shirley. As the movie begins, young academic Fred Nemser and his wife Rose roll up on their new assignment at Bennington College in Vermont, expecting to stay a few days with his supervising professor, Stanley, and his writer wife Shirley. The Nemsers are prevailed upon to stay on a bit to help with Shirley, whose problems only start with being agoraphobic. Shirley is brilliant and acerbic, insightful and mercurial, and wrecked that she is beginning work on a novel that we know will become 1951's Hangs a Man, about a Bennington student named Paula who had gone missing prior. Director Josephine Decker, who gave us Madeline's Madeline in 2018, focuses on the relationship between Shirley and Rose, who in Shirley's mind at its most twisted is commingled with the missing Paula from her work. We see conflict and camaraderie, a competition of wits, and the mutual struggle of being a woman, let alone an artist, in 50s academia. Along with this dynamic, we have that of Shirley and husband Stanley, played by a delightfully prickish Michael Stuhlbarg. This relationship brings to mind one from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. Fred, whose character is underexplored, is at once dominated by Stanley and in awe of him, watching as his mentor mingles amongst the co-eds and faculty. Decker's contrast of the claustrophobic and panoramic and use of handheld close-ups that seem almost wired to Shirley's mind make Shirley as frenetic a ride as you'll ever see for what's more of a character study than a story. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Mike Friend. Catch up with us at Take2MovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
First feels good, like being first to get your hands on the latest sneaker drop.
Hey, yeah.
Here's a new first for you, Samsung Galaxy 5G. Yes, 5G, now on Galaxy. So you can be first to even more, like being the first of your friends to post an 8K unboxing video of your new kicks. Man, first really looks good. Samsung Galaxy 5G. Feels good to be first. Now available on Galaxy S20 5G. 5G speeds vary and require optimal networking connection. Factors include frequency, bandwidth, congestion. See carrier for availability.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Julia Rosen.
Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad.
Thanks, Mr. Narwhal.
In real life, narwhals don't speak English, like the one bidding farewell to Will Ferrell's character in the movie Elf. Instead, they sound more like this. That's an audio clip recorded by scientists last summer under the icy waters of northwest Greenland.
If we want to describe what animals are doing, we first better understand what sounds are telling us.
Yevgeny Podolsky, a geophysicist at Hokkaido University in Japan. Podolsky and his colleagues study the soundscape of glacial fjords. They're noisy places where icebergs crash into the ocean and air bubbles fizz out of melting ice. These fjords are also home to narwhals. The animals are sometimes called unicorns of the sea because of their single, long, spiraled tusk, and they're shy, which makes them hard to study. So Podolsky teamed up with local Inuit hunters who snuck up on narwhals in kayaks and captured audio. That's the sound of a narwhal looking for food using echolocation, like a dolphin or a bat. And that's a narwhal closing in on its prey, which it vacuums up into its toothless mouth.
So it starts sounding like, to my ear, like a chainsaw or something like... So it's so many little clicks that we cannot even distinguish them. And this is recognized as a foraging-related sound used also by other animals. For example, other dolphinoids or bats, they do the same trick because when they approach the target, the prey, which is for narwhals, Arctic cod or Greenland halibut, they want to update their knowledge about the position of the target more frequently because the target is moving and they need to suck it in. And that's why this interval is getting shorter. And we even, by using some simple assumptions and equation, can know how far the animal is from the target.
The whistles you heard earlier are thought to be social calls, individuals communicating with other narwhals. The researchers reported these observations in the Journal of Geophysical Research, Oceans.
There are still sounds which we don't know what do they mean, and there are several like this.
Podolsky says that listening to narwhals is a first step toward understanding this mysterious whale and how it will cope as climate change, shipping, and other human activities alter its Arctic home.
There are all these things taking place right now in the region which will affect somehow these animals, but we have no clue even about the state or the previous state of these animals. So if we want to learn what's going to happen, we better start now. And I hope this is where sound monitoring can help us to learn more about these still mysterious creatures.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Julia Rosen.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1865. That was the day that 2,000 Union soldiers marched into Galveston, Texas. With them, they carried the news that those enslaved were now free. The Confederate General Robert E. Lee had actually surrendered more than 2 months earlier. Why then was there a delay in delivering the news of emancipation to Texas? It might have been that there were not enough federal troops to enforce the order. It has also been speculated that freedom was postponed to allow enough time for the enslaved workforce to harvest one last crop of cotton before freedom. Whatever the reason, General Order Number 3 finally was delivered. It read, quote, "The people of Texas are informed that in accordance with a proclamation of the Executive of the United States, all slaves are free. This involves an absolute equality of rights and rights of property between former masters and slaves. And the connection existing between them becomes that between employer and free laborer." On hearing of the news, the newly freed people celebrated. The next year, they celebrated again in a holiday that became known as Juneteenth. In the years that followed, the holiday spread to other cities. But in the segregated South, black residents were often barred from holding Juneteenth events on public land. That is why in 1872, several black men in Houston purchased property and established Emancipation Park as a space to hold the celebration. In 1980, Texas became the first state to formally recognize Juneteenth. Today, this holiday is celebrated in black neighborhoods across the country, with gatherings, barbecues, songs, and remembrances of the fight for freedom. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Friday is Juneteenth, the holiday celebrating the day when the last slaves were finally freed. The occasion will be marked with continuing protests against racial injustice. Support is rising for proposals in Congress to make Juneteenth a federal holiday after more than 2 weeks of demonstrations against police brutality following the killing of George Floyd, an unarmed black man in Minneapolis police custody. Some major companies, including Twitter, Nike, and the NFL, have made June 19th a paid holiday for their employees for the first time. Juneteenth commemorates the day, June 19, 1865, when a Union general finally informed people still enslaved in Texas that they were free. This was a full 2 years after Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation and a few months after the end of the Civil War. In a Wall Street Journal interview, Donald Trump said, quote, "Nobody ever heard of Juneteenth," until he rescheduled his upcoming Tulsa campaign rally so it wouldn't fall on that date. Here's the quote. "I did something good. I made Juneteenth very famous. It's actually an important event in an important time, but nobody ever heard of it." The Wall Street Journal reported that Trump, quote, paused the interview to ask an aide if she had heard of Juneteenth. And she pointed out that the White House had issued a statement last year commemorating the day, and that the White House has put out statements on Juneteenth during each of his first 3 years. Trump reportedly replied, "Oh, really? We put out a statement? The Trump White House put out a statement? Okay, good. Ugh." So this should be a weekend of celebration. In addition to Juneteenth, we have a couple of Supreme Court decisions to celebrate. On Monday, of course, the Supreme Court ruled that nobody can be fired on the basis of their sexual orientation or identity. And then on Thursday, the court ruled that the Trump administration cannot immediately carry out its plan to end the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals program, or DACA, which provides protection against deportation for about 650,000 so-called dreamers. These were people who immigrated to the U.S. as children. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote in the 5-4 opinion that Trump's appeal of the program was arbitrary and capricious. Roberts confirmed that Trump has the authority to end the program if he provides a, quote, reasoned explanation. Trump tweeted that the decision and another defeat made it appear that the court doesn't like me. Ugh. So Trump's getting dinged by social media again. Facebook on Thursday removed some of his campaign ads because they contained an upside-down red triangle that closely resembles a symbol that Nazis used to identify political prisoners in World War II concentration camps. A Facebook spokesman said, quote, "We removed these posts and ads for violating our policy against organized hate. Our policy prohibits using a banned hate group's symbol without the context that condemns or discusses the symbol. The ads in question appealed for donations and petition signatures to help fight anti-fascist activists. And the Trump campaign said the symbol is, quote, widely used by Antifa." Huh? The Anti-Defamation League said the symbol in the ads was practically identical to that used by the Nazi regime to classify political prisoners in concentration camps. But wait, there's more. Twitter on Thursday labeled a post retweeted by Trump as manipulated media that violated company policy. The video in this case shows a doctored news clip with a fake misspelled CNN banner or chyron that read, "Terrified toddler runs from racist baby." The original video, which went viral last year, showed a black toddler and a white toddler running towards each other and hugging. The video retweeted by Trump showed only a part in which one of the children runs ahead of the other. The original clip is then shown, followed by the words, "America is not the problem, fake news is." CNN responded with this quote, "CNN did cover the story exactly as it happened. We'll continue working with facts rather than tweeting fake videos that exploit innocent children. We invite you to do the same." As the rates of infection of COVID-19 continue rising around the country, the California Department of Health on Thursday ordered everyone in the state to wear masks whenever they leave home to reduce the risk of spreading the virus. State health officials listed nearly a dozen situations when cloth face coverings are specifically required, including when someone is working in an office or riding public transportation. The move came after California reported its largest number of new cases in a single day. 10 other states also require masks, despite public opposition in some places. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com, and while you're there, please click on that donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it will be partly cloudy today with highs near 92, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Sunny conditions right now with a high of about 65. Tonight, mostly cloudy skies early, then partly cloudy after midnight, lows in the low 60s, winds out of the northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. And then partly cloudy with lots of sun over the weekend, highs in the upper 80s, winds out of the west-northwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Confirmed cases of coronavirus in Jackson County of Southern Oregon stands at 85, with, I'm sure, more cases to be added as the day ends. Grass pollen right outside the window here at the mothership is very high. Grass pollen, of course. And the snoozing by our sous chef is pretty loud. I apologize, but he does that. We love him anyway. The air quality index for the Southern Oregon region is good at 38 parts per million, and that daytime UV index remains very high at 9. Do take care. Barometric pressure is rising at 29.95 inches. Visibility is at 10 miles, and relative humidity is at 68%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 66 and mostly cloudy. Paris is 68 and cloudy. Rome is 76 degrees and fair. Kyiv is 85 and fair. Kabul is 81 degrees and fair. Hong Kong, 80 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 66 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 58 and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 and mostly cloudy. And New York is 78 degrees Fahrenheit and fair. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. And Gurley of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. U.S. congressional Democrats introduced legislation to block Trump's plan to remove 9,500 troops from close ally Germany by prohibiting funding for a withdrawal of U.S. forces from Europe without congressional approval. Trump said on Monday he would reduce the number of U.S. troops in Germany to 25,000, faulting Berlin for failing to meet NATO's defense spending target and accusing it of taking advantage of the U.S. on trade.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Darren Butler of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Turkey's Constitutional Court has ruled that the lengthy jailing of a former head of Turkey's main pro-Kurdish party violated his rights. A decision published today showed, but he was not expected to be released due to a separate investigation. They have him all lined up. Selahattin Demirtas, one of Turkey's best-known politicians, has been in jail since November of 2016 on terrorism-related charges. He faces a sentence of up to 142 years in jail if found guilty in the main case against him. The court's decision said his detention had exceeded a reasonable period and his right to freedom had been violated, ordering the payment of compensation. However, media reports said the ruling would not lead to his release due to a separate investigation and arrest order. A court ruled last September that Demirtas should be released while his main trial continues. The Constitutional Court ruling concerns the detention for this period. Prosecutors then launched a new investigation into him and requested his arrest again after lifting the previous detention order. Demirtas denies the charges against him. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day, but you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up on Monday for River City Hash Mondays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here on Monday, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. De novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.